Get your SH Monster Arts at BigBadToyStore at the link in the description.
Kaiju, turtles, Dragon Ball, and more. It's Steven's Toy Reviews.
Hey there, collectors, it's gonna be Steven here, and welcome to a Showa SH Monster Arts review. You gotta love it. Oh yeah, Showa Monster Arts. This is really what we love. And today I'm taking a look at the SH Monster Arts Gigan 1972. Awesome. So this is going to be yet another Showa era kaiju, and it is not going to be a Godzilla. It's actually going to be an enemy of Godzilla, and you'll love to see it. Right off the top, I'm going to go ahead and say initially when Gigan first released and fans in Japan got a hold of it, we saw an immediate report of one of the sails breaking at the ball joint. Oh great, that's exactly what you want to hear, and the reason why is because they use translucent plastic for the sails, and there's a pop-out feature. Small ball joint translucent plastic. So is that going to be a big issue, and should you steer clear of Gigan like the plague, or is that just going to be a no big deal? Gigan's 120, 130 bucks depending on where you pick Gigan up. Oh. Let's take a look to see whether or not Gigan's going to be worth adding into your collection. So right off the top, what I will say is I did happen to have the pleasure to see the Gigan possibly prototype, more than likely close to final product, at San Diego Comic-Con this year, and from what I am able to recall, even looking back at some of the still pictures and videos, a Gigan pretty much looks nearly one-to-one to what we saw there, so kudos to Tamashii Nations for that. I have some minor quality control issues with this particular unit, with a little bit of green paint that did bleed on over to the red visor, but the details on the visor are fantastic. We have a whole bunch of little red dots in there, which are going to recreate a compound eye effect for Gigan. And then we do have the sails, which really look fantastic on his back, but I am going to talk about the sails in a minute. The gold paint application, in contrast to the really dark forest moss green, if you will, that looks really, really good. And just beyond that, very, very small paint drip on his visor, I'm not really able to see much else. I will say, coming from the Final Wars Gigan, which is known to have some die-cast parts, even though this is I guess one may say more organic Gigan, it was a little disappointing not to feel die-cast, even though, as many of you know, I'm not necessarily the champion for die-cast in parts, because once it gets loose, good luck fixing it. What I will say, though, is I will join some of the very vocal people who note that the SH Monster Arts line feels fragile to them. This figure I am very, very afraid of handling. Why? The sails on Gigan's back are made of an extremely hard plastic. If you go ahead and you feel your Heisei era Mechagodzilla figure, I would say any area of that is soft compared to this. And, as noted, they use a small translucent ball joint. Actually, the entirety of the sails are translucent to help with catching the light, and that is used for a gimmick to pop the sail in and out. Quite frankly, I would have preferred a softer plastic like they did for the Kyoto Reveltech way back in the day compared to what they did here. I am more than willing to bet that not only will mine break, but in the coming months, once this hits US distribution, that there will be many accounts of this breaking. So, while Gigan does look amazing, I am very afraid of breakages. Articulation, and realistically speaking, we're sort of rounding out the review. This is my mouse that I use to edit stuff while I'm doing this, just for funsies. So, Gigan's articulation. I'm somewhat amazed that we're at this point in the SH Monster Arts line and kaiju action figures, and some of the joints, they're actually pretty cool. Others are not really well thought out, and I'm kind of surprised that we're at this point. Let's go. So, for the head, because as you know, the way that we sort of work things here on STR is we go from the head down, and the way that we're going to work here is we do have the, what are we going to call these, mandibles? They're going to be basically just on hinges. Swivels. Okay, so they work. You see, they move in and out. That's going to be the extent of the range of movement there. Now, as we continue on, you have to keep this in mind. We're going to talk about the neck joints. So we have a system of ball joints here. Gigan can look up about that far and can look down about that far, which is really good. So we have this head that plugs into this portion of the neck that plugs in down here. So Gigan can, rock around and turn from side to side. Yeah, we get all that solid movement. So I'm going to go ahead and move my camera down a bit and we're going to do a super duper zoom in here, okay? Because even though we went over this part in the articulation section, this is going to be relevant a bit more here, because there's a little middle tooth in Gigan's mouth. A lot of folks may want to try to really close Gigan's mouth, but here's the thing. Gigan's range of movement on the jaw isn't all that great. He can really open his mouth just about that wide, and some folks have had some success with moving the tongue around. I have not, and there have been some who have reported that they can. Whenever I move the tongue on Gigan, it moves up a little bit and then immediately goes back down, so I don't know if it's a faulty hinge or whatnot. But as you can kind of see, there is that tooth, and that really does prevent his mouth from closing all the way. It kind of just, pushes it open. So that's something to keep in mind there. I wanted to show you because it's better to show and not just tell. That's what you did in school. Okay, so for the arms of Gigan, so they are going to plug in on ball joints, and mine are kind of tight. You can even actually hear the squeaking there. So Gigan can T-pose pretty much about that much, and since we do have ball joints here, same range of movement for the left and the right arms. So we can do spin just like that. And because we do have ball joints where they plug in, we can get rotation as well. The elbows, this is kind of where they drop the ball on the arm articulation. It does seem like this portion of the elbow is on a hinge where it plugs into this portion of the arm, bicep area, if you will. And we get little to no movement. This portion of the scythe, sickle, claw, whatever you would prefer, that is on a ball joint. You can kind of see we get rocker movement there, and we do actually get that rotation, that swivel movement. So I'm going to go ahead and move the arm here. And as you can kind of see, this is going to be about the range of movement that we get to get Gigan to bend his elbow. And why? I don't know. Torso articulation is non-existent, but we are going to take a look a little bit at the inner workings because we're going to talk about the hips and the legs. So you may be familiar, and we're going to see a picture, but if you don't have this figure, with some Godzilla figures, like Godzilla proper, and the way that it works is a double axis or barbell style ball joint where there's like a Y system in here, where there's a socket, ball joint plugged in, ball joint comes out, and a ball joint seated in here. That's going to be the case for Gigan as well. You hear that creakiness? Yeah, Gigan's got a lot of tight joints, and this one was so tight that it almost broke. And as a matter of fact, for editing purposes, click, I actually had to pop the leg off in order to perform just a little bit of figure surgery, mostly putting in shock oil, to fix that. So if you need some assistance with applying shock oil or your preferred lubricant, whether it be dish soap if you happen to have that and you don't have access to shock oil, here's kind of what the disassembly looks like for the innards of Gigan, and you can see where the different joints are. So now let's go ahead and snap back to reality, where we can see that this little portion of the sculpt is actually going to be a ball joint. So this way we can push up and push down a little bit, as you can kind of see there, and we can move the leg. Then this portion plugs into the thigh here, and we can move the leg a bit more. So basically, Gigan can kick out about this far at max range with both legs, kick that far forward and that far back. This leg can kind of do that, but it is very tight, and I don't really want to push it in fear of stressing it. For the knees, it does seem like we do have ball joints here that act effectively as hinges, but we do get, little rotation here and there. And then for the ankles, we do get ball joint movement, so we do get ankle rockers and moving forward and back. For the tail, what about the sails? We'll come back. We do actually have a ball joint. You probably saw that when we took a look at the hips, but nevertheless, throw it up on the screen real quick. Look towards the booty of Gigan. Let's come back. There is a ball joint that is seated in the body, and you can push the ball joint down. You can also push the ball joint back up. That is intended, I believe, to get Gigan into a flight mode, which that does come in with the sails as well. We'll talk about the sails again in a second. So we do have a system of ball joints to really help Gigan's tail get into some fun poses. This portion of Gigan's tail seems to be a quality control issue across multiple units that I've seen. There's even been some other reviewers who, while they have not popped this joint off, they do look to be similar in causing that little bit of a gap across different units that I have seen, and it would help if we actually had the tail in focus. So we do have some good movement about that far when we turn it and get Gigan into frame and so forth. So it is good movement. But when we take a look at the sails down here, you got to keep this in mind. So, as I made mention in the sculpt and the paint section, Gigan does feel very, very fragile, and it's mostly going to come from this very, very rigid plastic that comes from the sails. I mean, you can just hear that. So the way that the articulation works for the sails is out of the box. Let's go ahead and put the tail down. Gigan sails are pushed in, okay? There is a pop in and out feature for the two outside sails, right? So you pull them, preferably at the base, like that. I showed you there is a translucent ball joint in there, and a lot of folks thought that that ball joint is what pops out. Not exactly. The socket is what pops in and out, so that's good. But ball joints are extremely translucent plastic ball joints. In this case, are going to be extremely fragile, and someone in Japan did note that because they did not pop the wings out with just a little bit of movement from side to side, which is what you do have to do. You can see, even so, you can get the sails to do this. They broke it. I dropped Gigan on his side. I thought it broke. And then for the middle sail, we get just a little bit of wiggle movement and so forth. So with the tail moving, there's a little bit of clearance distance at the base, so be careful. So here's what I'm going to say. Watch out for shorts on my channel. If this breaks, I will let you know. So Gigan's articulation, it's fine, but I'm not understanding why they went with what they did for the engineering when they could have done better with the elbows and for the tight joints, which are not exclusive to my Gigan. Now, with that being said, sculpt and paint, good. Articulation is good. Accessories, none. So let's have a quick talk here. I understand entirely that the Kyoto Decisive Battle Gamera 99 is a repaint of an already existing figure that they already got their money for, already had accessories, and that one does include more accessories. I get that. The Decisive Battle Final Wars Gigan, again, an existing figure that had accessories, they included more. I get that. Totally understand that. This is $120 to $130 depending on retailer prices. Sales or whatnot. Not Gigan's, sales. There's no accessories. At the top, in the thumbnail, the intro shot, that is actually just a little blood effect that I repurposed from the Super Action Stuff Casket of Cruelty, which is really cool. So you destroy all monsters fans. Gigan's little, you just tap Z and that's what you get. That's what I used. But the Decisive Battle Gigan, I don't know where it's at. I actually kind of lost it, sort of. I know he's here, but he's in a box. Anyway, his beam effect does work for this version of Gigan. But when we go back to the old school Kyoto Revel Tech, when we talk about, they had to pay this for licensing fees and Yuji Sakai sculpting, at least it seems to indicate that in the box. This one at least came with a few small buildings. Tamashi Nations, come on. Like, that's pretty disappointing. Like, why can't we get some accessories for this guy? Yeah, I'm pretty bummed. Yeah, so if you do need some accessories, I already gave you a suggestion with the Casket of Cruelty, which beyond just that little splurt effect, there's lots of cool stuff, lots of cool blood effects. But I got videos to help you out for effect parts and stands, which they did promote a flying Gigan on the box and the promo shots, but they didn't include a stand for that. What is the aversion with not including stands for flying kaiju? I don't know. Anyway, with that being said, let's go ahead and move on over to a size comparison, so this way you can see how big this Gigan is. And I would say great size. I really like that they quote-unquote fixed, if you will, the sizing issue for the Showa era, specifically with this one. It will blend in perfectly with pretty much all of the MonsterArts or 6-inch scale figures that you have. At least I think so, in my opinion. However, this now brings up the issue that the Showa figures that Tamashii Nations has released in the SH MonsterArts line are now cattywampus, and yeah, whatever. Buy now, skip, or wait for a deal. Here's kind of what we have. Sort of in a vacuum by itself, I don't think that Gigan is that bad of a figure. I think that the sculpted detail and the paint applications are really fantastic, and it's probably one of the best figures in that regard to come out of the SH MonsterArts line of recent memory. It looks great. I will say that the sales really do scare me just in that regard, and when we're talking again about a vacuum, considering this being a figure by itself, well, that's about it. It looks great and the articulation is rather solid. Once we take it out of the vacuum and factor in the price point, the lack of accessories compared to other comparable figures that are going to be in the price point, and the engineering and the progress that they've made over the years, Gigan's faults start to really shine, and yeah. So what I would say for Gigan, if you are looking to get this figure, I would say it's good. However, handle this with kid gloves. I am more than willing to bet within the coming months, we will see more reports of the sales breaking, and keep an eye on my channel, because if that should happen, I will absolutely report that it does. Handle this with kid gloves. I personally would wait for a sale, not the kind on his back, because while good, not necessarily $120 good. Hey collectors, that's going to wrap up the video today, and as always, thanks for watching, commenting, sharing, subbing, it all helps. I always enjoy responding to comments, so be sure to drop one down below and I will respond if I can. I do have supporters on Patreon as well, and each review gets an end card to show who is supporting each month, so here are the end cards. Camera batteries, SD cards, even hard drives. It's not possible without that support, so thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Here's the final end card, so this way you can click subscribe, check out another video, or even check out the social media outlets. You know you want to. Before we end today, as in the description, there may be paid ad space, affiliate links, or product samples that were sent out in this video, so please check out the STR ad disclosure. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch ya in the next video.